Happy Monday, and welcome back to the Lord and Arch channel. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery, and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery? Today's episode is called Little Mother. Maurice Chivarella was a quiet, sweet 9-year-old girl. In 1964, she lived in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, with her mother Mary and her father Carmen, while she and her 4 siblings attended St. Joseph's Parochial School, which sat just 6 blocks from their home. She was known to her family as a little mother, who always helped with household chores, no matter what she was asked to do. The rest of her time was spent playing with her siblings and helping at the family store that was next door, called the Little Market. Maurice loved to play the family organ and compose songs with her brother Ron. More than anything, she loved pretending to be a nun, and one day hoped to join their ranks. March 18th was a special day for Maurice because one of the nuns in the parish was celebrating her feast day. Before 1967, when a woman decided to become a nun in the Catholic Church, she spent time as a postulate or novice and graduated to a novitiate. She then received her habit. She was given the title of sister, and her name was changed to reflect one of the church's saints. Her birthday is no longer celebrated on the day she was born, but rather on the same feast day as her patron saint. The children who attended the school would then bring special treats that the nun could enjoy in lieu of the presents she would normally receive. Maurice planned to take 2 cans of fruit to school to honor the day, and she was very excited about it. The 3rd grader had never walked to school on her own and was in fact afraid to. She feared that if she was out alone, stray dogs might attack and hurt her. But this morning, she wanted to get there earlier than her siblings to leave her treat before morning mass. The Chivarella children usually came home for lunch each school day, but on this day, they had troubling news. Maurice didn't come home for lunch, and she hadn't been seen at school that day. Carmen called the police and reported his daughter missing. He then walked back to St. Joseph's Church area to search for his daughter. By 1 p.m., local police received a terrible call. The body of a young girl had been found miles away at the Milnesville garbage dump. The area had started out as a coal stripping operation, but was later abandoned. Residents now used the area to dispose of unwanted items and trash. 26 feet down the side of one of those abandoned stripping pits was a young girl that investigators could immediately tell was deceased. When she was recovered, they had found that they discovered Maurice. Her hands and feet had been tied by her own shoelaces, and the brightly colored scarf she had worn that day had been placed in her mouth as a gag. She was found to be fully clothed, with her school bag and shoes lying nearby. An autopsy would show that she had been sexually assaulted before being strangled to death. Foreign hairs were also found on her body that were taken for examination. While investigators took what little evidence they could from the crime scene, her father Carmen had no idea about the discovery and kept searching for his daughter. A stranger broke the news to him, saying, "The Chivarella girl was found dead." The stranger didn't know that he was talking to her father. A full investigation was quickly opened, but there was very little evidence to go on. Friends and neighbors were questioned as to whether or not they saw Maurice that day. Only a few had. One was a schoolmate who saw Maurice leaving her house as she drove by with her mother, and a woman saw Maurice from her home as the young girl made her way to school. Gathering evidence from an informal trash dump sounds difficult enough, but thankfully snow had recently fallen. Investigators used the fresh blanket to tell which items were dumped before the snow and which were dumped after, the latter items being taken as possible evidence. Unfortunately, none of those items would prove to be connected to the murder. A plaster cast of a tire mark found at the scene was taken, but investigators never found a match. In the days that followed, a man was picked up and found to be carrying a scrapbook full of newspaper clippings involving various murders. One of those pages was devoted to Maurice. He was taken in and questioned, but released when his alibi checked out and no longer considered a person of interest. To make things even more difficult, the night before the murder, over 1,000 people were bussed in from nearby Bristol. Bristol was Hazleton's basketball rival, and the town had been flooded with fans. Investigators were afraid that their suspect was a Bristol native who stayed in town the night of the ball game and then snatched Maurice the next morning. Everyone who made the trip was questioned, but no new leads were developed. In 1966, the hairs found on Maurice were sent to the FBI for analysis, but nothing could be determined. In all, over 10,000 people had been questioned, and Maurice's murder became the most expensive and widely covered case in the town's history. But then, it went cold. For over 30 years, investigators would take Maurice's file and try to rework the case, but always came up with very little. That was until 2007, when DNA technology finally brought new information into play. New techniques had revealed fluid on Maurice's jacket that had never been tested. That and the hairs found on her body were worked by the state's DNA lab. They were able to finally develop a DNA profile. Unfortunately, when the profile was run against various databases, no matches were found. They would continue to check once a month, but no match ever developed. In 2019, the profile was uploaded to GEDmatch with the help of Parabon Nanolabs, and a match was found to a very distant relative of the suspect. They were also able to provide a phenotype snapshot of the suspect. Even though leads were now being developed, still none of them were fully panning out. Finally, in 2020, investigators got the help they needed. An 18-year-old genealogist named Eric Shubert contacted police and offered his services free of charge. Eric started researching people's genealogy at the age of 10. Quote, "I was homesick a lot when I was a kid, so I would see genealogy commercials and I would say, wait a second, maybe I could do that. I thought it would be a 2-week thing, but here I am, and I'm certainly thankful I started," he said. At the age of 15, he advertised his services to friends and family and was surprised to see just how many people needed his type of help. Before his 18th birthday, he would not only help those close to him, but people in other states as well. Then, as he prepared to graduate from high school, Maurice's murder case was brought to his attention. "I wasn't sure if I should do it. Is this a murder? Is someone going to come after me? Like, I was barely 18. I was a little nervous," he said. Researching the family tree of the suspect took him a couple of years, and Maurice's case turned out to be the hardest he had worked up until that time. His research left investigators with 4 possible suspects. 3 of the suspects were eventually cleared, but they had one last match, that of James Paul Fort. Fort's analysis would have to come from an exhumation, as he had died of natural causes in 1980. But on February 3rd, 2022, investigators would finally confirm that Fort matched the DNA profile and was found to be Maurice's killer. At the time of the murder, Fort was 22 years old. In 1974, he pled guilty to aggravated assault, but only served a year of probation. In 1978, he was arrested for reckless endangering and harassment. At the time of the murder, he lived only 7 blocks from the Shivarella household. As a matter of fact, when he died at the age of 38, he still lived in Hazleton. Investigators believe that Maurice's assault and death were crimes of opportunity, as they could find no proof that the two had ever met or had any connection to each other. Maurice's case is currently the 4th oldest cold case in the U.S. to be solved using genetic genealogy, and it's the oldest one in Pennsylvania. The Shivarellas thanked everyone for their help, but said they will always feel the loss of Maurice. Carmen Marie Radke, Maurice's sister, expressed her feelings about the case by quoting a passage from the Bible. "But anyone who is an obstacle to bring down one of these little ones would be better thrown into the sea with a great millstone around his neck." Her parents, who are no longer living, went to their graves wanting justice for their daughter. Carmen said, "Our family now knows the identity of her murderer. Justice has been served today." Police ask that if you had any contact with James Fort, to please call or visit your local authorities and file a report. They believe that there are other crimes that Fort might have committed, and those families deserve answers as well. Case cracked. I would like to thank CNN.com, newspapers.com, the New York Times, WNEP.com, and Fox43.com. Of course, the biggest thank you goes to Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case, and here she is now to discuss it with us. Christy, every case that we talk about on the channel here grabs at my heart in some way, but when it comes to cases about children being harmed like this, it's upsetting. Like it really just kind of angers me on top of the squeeze you feel with your heart. Like it's just terrible. I mean, we have a child here that was so young.
I know. And what makes it even worse is that some of her younger siblings don't even remember her now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really terrible. And to think of someone that was going to, wanted to become a nun, would have been serving the community. I mean, there's all kinds of good that was going to happen in this world that gets stopped because of this guy. Yeah. Speaking of, why do police, are there any particular cases that they have that they think are connected to Fort?
They do. One is from Gina Connors. She was a young girl that also lived in the area. After Maurice's murder, Gina's parents refused to let her even walk off the front porch without a chaperone. But as the years started to go by, they relaxed that rule.
Okay.
Well, one day, a block from the Chivarella's little market, Gina was walking with a friend and a man pulled up in a white car. He rolled down his window and told the girls that he would give them a ride. They said no, they wanted to walk, but he wouldn't leave. When he got more and more insistent, she and the friend ran into a nearby store and asked the clerk for help. Then the car left, thankfully.
Okay. Now,
her parents had told her if she got into a situation like this to run. So in a way, Gina's life was saved by Maurice's story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, once Fort was identified and the news of it went public, Gina saw his photo and she just knew. She was convinced that that's the man.
Wow.
Yep. They had another one, and this one, it's so sad. There's an unsolved case in the area, and it's another 9-year-old girl named Carol Ann Dougherty. Now, she was sexually assaulted and killed in 1962, and while police believe that Fort could be involved, they haven't been able to prove any connection.
Okay. So I see why they're being so strong about putting that call out there that they need more information.
Oh, definitely.
On some of these cases. And just looking at, what it took for Maurice's case to get solved. I mean, it was kind of a Hail Mary shot in terms of DNA. And thankfully it came through. So other cases of this age, if they don't have DNA collected or something like that, how are they going to get solved? It's going to take caring people stepping up and doing the right thing. So as young as our victim is in this story, very interesting that we also have an extremely young hero, someone that wouldn't even be born until years and years after this occurrence. Tell me, has Eric Shubert been hired by Parabon yet?
Well, as of 2021, no, he hasn't been hired by Parabon.
Get on that, guys. Get on it.
They got to snatch this kid up.
Yeah.
Now, Eric has cracked another case. And it hasn't even been publicly talked about yet. It's not been released.
Wow.
And he says he's helped over 1,000 families. That's amazing. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
He's also been asked to help with several other cold cases by law enforcement, and says even if he doesn't get into genealogy professionally, he says he, quote, can't stay away. And as long as there's a need, I'll go for it.
That's awesome.
Such a great guy.
Yeah, I looked him up a little bit today. He is on Twitter, and I gotta say, he's got a pretty interesting Twitter profile going. He seems to be a presidential history buff. So all these great photos and interesting pieces of information about our U.S. presidents. If that sounds like it's up your alley, please give him a follow over at ES Genealogy on Twitter, at ES Genealogy. Christy, thank you so much for all your hard work on today's episode. We really appreciate you, and I've got some other people to thank right now. Thank you, PayPal supporters Leslie Haslinger and Jennifer Wilson. For over 6 years, we've always run limited commercial ads here on YouTube, and we can't do that without support. If you'd like to help the channel keep going and growing, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee, like Sharon Ayers recently did. We know that learning about the mechanisms that help support and find justice in these cases is important to understand the many unsolved cases we also cover, and we really appreciate your support in allowing us to continue doing that. Remember, you can get another Lord and Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow and every Tuesday after that. Visit seriouslymysterious.com and subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon below if you want to catch one of our weekly Secret Studio live shows. And of course, I'll be back with a new Unsolved Mystery for you on Friday, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.